Chapter 3.
Hello, welcome Weekend Walkabout in our gardens and years virtually.
We're still Garden A to Z, still Janet,
Still
Steve.
Stephen.
We're still talking about Thanks Great Grand Folks, the history, and we're looking now in Chapter 3 at reflection. We've worked our way in detail through the first couple pages of the material that we left for you on our website. Now we're going to just skip and hop through the rest that's written out for you. Because what we need to reflect on is what we can be glad of. We're glad they planted trees, groups of trees.
And that they managed woodlands.
Right, that they put these beautiful trees out. That doesn't happen in a generation or 2 generations. That they managed their sugar maples so that we're still having sugaring woods and sugar bushes. That they put up hedges at their farms and that those hedges are still there. That the hedges in the front yards are nice things to have. But bigger than the hedges, the shelter belts out in the plains, out in places that had been cleared of trees for farms, they planted shelter belts that are still working for us. Just like in Europe, which without a shelter belt, without a big hedge like this is a huge beech hedge. There's Sonia showing you how huge that beech hedge is. These hedges kept the North Sea breezes, winds, gales off of things. They're essential in Seattle and Portland and Oregon, and they don't happen overnight. And whoever plants hedges like this anymore? At the Dawes Arboretum, where it spells Dawes Arboretum out of Arborvitae. Yep. They also did things like manage the woods. Rather than leaving them thick like this, they thinned them out to keep a variety of trees, to let trees grow, to use the little ones to keep the big ones until they became
Mother Nature has done that for us in some instances lately with the ashes. But
and we're now the stewards. We can't blame the gardeners for the lumbering mess. And lumbering has gotten better than this slash stuff that used to happen. In the East Coast, especially Vermont and Massachusetts, they're seeing the problems with erosion and runoff from this kind of, and they've changed it. That's not the gardeners.
Even on a flat area, there's erosion and runoff.
But the trees that they planted, for the most part, because of the soot and the smog and the familiarity with European trees, there were a lot of European trees planted. Look at that purple beech. Where the heck are you, Steve? Connecticut, Rhode Island?
That was in Connecticut or Rhode Island. I can't remember. We were on my way up to the Cape from Connecticut. That's a Japanese maple. No. That's a Norway maple.
2-story Norway maple. And then there's the purple beech in that front yard. Isn't that gorgeous? I mean, that doesn't happen overnight. I love beeches.
Their root system, their flares are different than everybody else's.
They're gorgeous. And even in Beacon Hill, got the big trees planted, or in the commons and the gardens, the parks. These are the things that are our legacy, and we should be glad for. And glad that they left some native oaks and started using the native plants.
And didn't,
We can be happy about the salt spray roses that have spread all over the Lake Superior coast and the Atlantic coasts from China. But they did work. We can be glad of things like the Van Hoot spireas, which I wish there were more of available for sale.
Yes, maybe someday.
And the improvements that they made in things like the viburnums. But they did also plant the natives, and we've got some beautiful big natives. I know, not too far from us in Royal Oak, some beautiful big tulip poplars. Tulip tree turning yellow in the fall. Those beautiful mitten-type leaves.
Uniquely, and a wonderful flower.
Just an incredible flower.
Usually it's high up in the tree and hard to see, and they rarely fall whole like that. But
they're beautiful.
They are gorgeous.
The red osier dogwoods. They brought the red twig dogwood in 3 different species is native all around the earth.
The globe.
In the northern latitudes. So they brought theirs and we had ours, and they started using both. They fell in love with flowering trees, so much so that those same people who were pushing the lawn and pushing the alleys of trees required
flowering trees on
in at least one neighborhood and at least one community near us. It was a requirement that you get your landscaping done within 6 months and that it include at least 3 different flowering trees. Don't you love it? Count your plants.
Every tree flowers, almost.
They started using sumac when they realized that they were good along the highways and for cover for animals. And they improved a lot of things. They sent stuff back home. They did some hybridizing once those poor Victorian ladies were allowed to talk about pollinating. They started doing things. Our Meserve hollies are the results. The hardier evergreen hollies are the results of a lady in her garden who took care of that kind of stuff and introduced it. So we can be thankful for better plants. Our native rhododendrons being crossed with the ones that were collected from Asia. Which gave us from Minnesota the Exbury deciduous, wonderfully fragrant deciduous azaleas.
Cool colors too.
They noticed our trees that had weird branches on them and started growing the weeping pines and the dwarf spruces, and by George, loading up our foundations with dwarf conifers. We're glad that they demanded more as they got interested in gardening. And glad that we demand more too. Our example, what we mean by this, is that we've got this kind of clout, is that one year we went to a nursery saying, we're looking for bottlebrush buckeye. And the nursery manager there said, why would you want that? It's really not kind of a crummy. Well, we looked and we found our bottlebrush buckeye. 2 years later, we were at the nursery and I looked and said, oh, you've got bottlebrush buckeye. And the nursery manager said to me, great plant. You wouldn't believe it. Yeah. That's only because we asked for it. That they do.
We did that with climbing oak leaf hydrangea. One of the other ones. It wasn't just bottlebrush. There was something else they weren't target. Maybe
that red admiral and the bottlebrush. And not a great fall color, but it's there and it's native. And we've watched it in each generation. We've watched and lost something. I saw the elms go down, and now I've seen the ashes go down. Where at first they just didn't look too good. And then they started sprouting from the older branches as if they'd been pollarded, which they had been because the ash borers, which wiped through here. Fast. I'm sorry for those of you on the East Coast who are just getting this, but we so rarely see an ash now, Steve and I, after the 2003 wipeout here, that we forget what they are.
They're beautiful trees. They have purple color, yellow color.
When they're bad, these borers blow the bark and cambium off of a big tree in 1 year's time.
A big tree.
Yeah. Those D-shaped holes.
They're all over. That's just a real small size.
So in our area, we watched it with the elms, and here.
This is the garden. This is that alley of trees.
Alley of ashes. No breaks. Borers just wiped right through, and this is that same street a year later.
And one ash is still hanging on.
So we learned that some of these things they pushed on us, we have to just let go. We can't have
to let go. We have to go to diversity.
We want disease-resistant plants. We want things that grow healthy, that have room to grow. The Coosa dogwood's more disease-resistant than our native dogwood. If we're going to use a tree on a street, then it's a better one than the native one is. The Coosa is. And we're really glad that they brought their own plants. When you think of the fact that they moved here not knowing at all what they were getting into, that they were coming out here knowing that there were stampedes. In Michigan, just like in Oklahoma, people lined up on the day that the territory was open and literally streamed out into it to stake their claim. And they would send people and then come back for the others. They were leaving this where everything was cultivated. Every square inch was cultivated, and they were coming out to this. And yet
prairies and meadows and forests.
And being told by the surveyors that it was worthless, sandy, swampy stuff in Michigan, for instance. And yet they were able to see the beauty of the natives and the potential that was there and do something with it. Our native liatris in that picture, and here the native potentillas, which have become mainstays in a lot of gardens. So, here they are getting ready for the move, and they've got priorities that cannot change. We must bring tools. We must bring food plants. We must bring medicines, and we'll make do with what's there, or we'll mail order it back home. So ornamentals were always last. They brought the good tools. I bet some of us still have them.
There are some good tools.
Grandma's spade, Grandpa's fork, somebody's hoe. And they brought their fruit plants. A lot of them times they would wrap bare roots into oilcloth and hope they would make it. More often the little sapling on the right than the bigger plant.
They had to wrap in oilcloth to try to keep the salt from spray. Even in a ship inside it, it salt is everywhere on the ocean.
Yeah, sometimes going across the continent to get to the new space that they could grow to.
Oh, even
they
that,
gave up their water in order to keep their plants alive.
Yeah.
They brought seeds of their sage and lavender and thyme and rosemary and their medicinal herbs. This is motherwort. It's a biennial. You know it if you've got any kind of part shaded area. There it looks like when it's blooming and when it leaves its seed pods, burrs.
Mm-hmm.
But shortly after they got here, they found out we didn't need motherwort.
Yeah, that was.
They wrote home, said you don't have to bring seeds of motherwort. There's blue cohosh.
Oh yeah, that was
papoose
better.
root. That's much better, and the natives are showing us how to use it. Great book.
Yeah.
Just trying to capture all of the incredible knowledge that the natives had before we lost it all. Recapturing it now. They brought stuff. They brought soapwort literally for soap to suds things. They brought spurge in order to have something to keep the flies away. They brought scarlet campion because they could bring the seeds and have it grow just anywhere and give them some bright color to look at. They brought bulbs because they could do those without water.
Mm-hmm.
They brought butterfly bush because it was new back in their garden in Europe. They'd just come in from Asia, and this was a cool thing. It grows from seed. They brought their favorite monardas to hybridize with our native ones. And they brought their wonderful, beautiful bleeding heart lady in a bath. And they inadvertently and vertently brought things like weeds like quack grass.
They didn't know what the forage was here. They thought that they needed to bring plants for forage for their animals.
And by gosh, they're good. And by gosh, that stuff is everywhere now. And they did cultivate stuff. We're glad they cultivated and enjoyed butterfly weed and doll's eyes as a medicinal. Hepatica, which they recognized as something related to their medicinals from back home. Beautiful little violet-like flowers on the hepatica. They saw the trout lily and actually propagated it. Said, let's grow more of those.
Asters.
They made money on our asters. They'd not seen anything like this in Europe. That New England aster made lots of money sending stuff back home. Our native columbines went that way. So did our coreopsis. And you can look and see what's native and what's not. Your best source for that, really for the best single source, there's always going to be a little discrepancy in one thing or another. Go to plants.usda.gov. Easiest thing you can go to. Put in the scientific or the common name of what you want, and you'll find a map of where it's native, if it's native, whether it's introduced, whether it's on any lists as an invasive. So we're still doing these Rebeckias and penstemons and trilliums and grasses and liatris. We're the ones now on the edge of saying we can grow the natives, and someday 2-3 generations from now they're going to be glad that we gave them the penstemons for the hummingbirds, and that we kept the trilliums
and kept the liatris and improved in some instances, if you consider it
for the birds and for the bees and the wild lobelias. The fact that they worked with nature is something that we should reflect on. Steve's great uncle Axel collected lupin seeds and threw them on his hill. And we brought those lupin seeds home and planted them and propagated them. And they're still being grown now in our kids' gardens and our gardens. They're not native, but they have a link. And link is nice. And they noticed nice things. They noticed, well, this other Solomon seal is kind of cool. It's like the native one, but it's got a white edge. It's good to watch these things and grow them and see what happens. It's good to grow things for the pollinators.
And see the different bees that could come to things.
Oh, yeah. You grow it, you get 6, 7, 8 different kinds of bees just right away. It's great to have pollinators out there. And it's good to see that people and kids are growing up now seeing pollinators like hawk moths and butterflies and bees because of what people did. It's good that we're now looking and saying, okay, so Lespedeza, bush clover, it's not invasive, and it does bloom very late, and the pollinators love it. And so we're finding
pretty flower.
We've got a stricter criteria now. We don't just throw anything out there. We look and say, this is a good one. Let's put it out there. Yeah. If you haven't seen the Coincide book, you need to see Coincide, where someone has spent a lifetime noticing the phenology, the timing between insects and plants, so closely that you can then watch the plant and predict when certain insects are going to be doing what they do. That's what Coincide is all about.
It's a wonderful reference.
It's a great book that says when the snowball hydrangea, and this is the snowball we like, the one that doesn't fall over. When the snowball hydrangea's flowers are turning from green to white, that's when Japanese beetles emerge. That's when you have to watch for Japanese beetle. That's when you go out and pick them off and get them off of your plants before they move in great numbers. And that kind of stuff is in Coincide, and people have written it down, and it's the way you can hand things down a lot further than your own lifetime's reach.
Mm-hmm.
So we're glad they brought favorite plants. We're glad they planted trees. We're glad that they found so many different uses for plants, from cooking and medicinal and textiles, and that they made good tools. And we want to insist that people get good tools now.
Get a tool that fits you and feels comfortable and doesn't hurt you.
Yeah. And so glad that they brought the stuff that were the good, reliable plants, disease resistant and good producers. We hope you know about seedsavers.org, and that you order from them or become a member and get their incredibly detailed full catalog. Because anybody can order any of their 60 kinds of beans and 100 kinds of tomatoes, but it goes up into the thousands when you're one of the members.
Mm-hmm.
They're the largest non-governmental seed bank in the world. And it's just supported by people like us, carrying on someone's tradition of the German horticultural bunch bean, for instance.
Yep.
And we're glad we don't want to lose any more natives. We're glad that we belong to a community that's careful about that we are aware of diversity, of when we plant trees, of looking around and saying, we're not going to let our neighborhood put all maples down the street. We're going to have diversity, because we've seen this happen too many times where the trees get wiped out.
We won't forget how much we need plants.
And we will never stop trying to improve or discount what they noticed and passed on to us. Because as silly as they might have been on some things, they got the experience just like you and I do. And they need to pass it down to those guys. Show them how to do wattle. It's centuries old. Show them how. Come to the zoo with us next spring. We'll show you how to do wattle outside with these people who are willing to go out and work with their hands in the dirt,
in the mud,
and plant a few trees that you won't see grow. Plant a sugar maple with room to grow, where someday somebody will see it look like that, even if you don't. It might be little now. Do we have the patience that they have? That linden is going to be big.
And it's going to
be a great, fragrant bee tree. We love seeing the societies that are doing this now. This is at the Massachusetts Horticultural Society. It's their beech hedge. Individuals can't plant the kinds of stuff that societies can plant. So we're really glad for the legacy that you and we are all leaving. It's time to go. It's time to head out into the madness of the holiday world. We hope that you're going to have a great holiday. And if you've got any questions, you can hang with us now. Otherwise, we'll see you after Christmas. Yes, we're going to be here because.
Just because.
When we set it up, we said it would be pre-recorded next week. But who knew that we were still going to be in lockdown or in virtual lockdown? So we're still going to be here next week. If you'd like to come talk about playing with your new high-tech toys in your garden, that's what we're talking about next week. So what questions have we got, if any?
I don't know. We do. I'm sorry. We do have a question. Gretchen is curious whether we know our new immigrants, our new incomers, are they bringing us plants?
Yes, especially when people coming from the East and from South America, they're bringing things and they're trying them. You remember Mrs. Basic Egbo? Kofi Egbo was bringing things in. Remember, he was telling the customs people when he brought them in that they were prayer sticks, but he was bringing cuttings of things from Nigeria, because let's see if they grow. It's still happening. And in Seed Savers Exchange, the numbers of Asian vegetables is growing and growing every year, because they're collecting those seeds from people too. So yes, there are more coming. And boy, am I glad to hear that somebody's got a great from Michigan that grew corn and potatoes, because you learned the old way. You know, if you've got any of that information, a lot of the agricultural universities are gathering it now. They're literally out interviewing the older farmers now about how did you do things? how did your grandfather do things? Because we've lost some of those things and we need to get them back. So you might want to contact the extension and just see whether there's any studies going on, any graduate students working on that.
We don't have any more questions, and I see that Marion has left, but she put a really great suggestion in the chat. She says that she's inspired to go back and examine the plants that are in the back of all her old family photos, and I think that would be a very cool thing to
Marion,
do.
and please everybody do that, because we meant to tell them that that's what we were doing, going through old family photos saying
and,
what's growing back there and what's under their feet. Thank
what
you
do we
so
remember?
much. What a great group of people. Have a very wonderful holiday, or I hope you've had a nice holiday if yours is already passing, and we will talk to you next week.
And that's it
Take
for
care,
chapter
everyone.
3.
Yep.
Which
means that we're done with great grandfolks, and we're doing Smart Gardener in the high-tech age next Saturday.
Maybe Santa will bring you something high-tech. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye,
Take
everybody.
care.
Take care.
Everyone take care.